Week 1 of the 2024 preseason has now come and gone. We're inching closer to kickoff on the 2024 regular season. A lot of rookies getting their unofficial debuts, a lot of guys in new threads making their first appearances for new teams. We'll talk about it all today on the Pump Fake. I'm Jared Bailey, joined today by my good friend Doug Farrar. Hello, Doug. How are you?
What's up, Ghost Rider?
Oh, man, I'm just another day in paradise. We're trugging along through the off season, and now that the preseason's here, we got to see a lot of these highly anticipated quote unquote debuts, and I mean the one that has kind of taken everybody by storm. First overall pick Caleb Williams looked pretty good in his first outing with the Chicago Bears. One throw in particular was one of those just FU throws. Watch this. Running to his right, just whipping his body and throwing a nice pass to, I believe, Cole Kmet. I could be wrong on who that was. But overall, good body of work in his first taste of NFL action. A lot of these rookie quarterbacks getting their first taste of NFL action. But Caleb, I think, was the most anticipated for obvious reasons. And he didn't disappoint. I liked what I saw, and can't wait for Bears fans to predict the Bears to go 15-2 now. It's going to be great.
Nice. The 75-year quarterback curse is officially over. You mentioned whipping his body around, and I wrote about that for Athlon specifically because he has that where he'll just whip his core and his shoulders to the target. And that's really important when you're throwing on the move. Guys who can't throw on the move generally don't do that. And they just they have to they'll extend their bodies before their arms and everything goes out of whack. And you have one of those, Stephen A. Smith first pitches and it just turns into a disaster. And I noticed this when I wrote him up coming out of USC. He's really good at, and I'm not going to compare him to Mahomes. It's just stupid, but he has that thing that Mahomes has, Josh Allen has, Lamar has, a few guys have it, where they've taught themselves. Actually, Russell Wilson has it pretty well. He's taught himself or has been taught to, whatever it is, just to naturally flip that. It's like if you play golf, you want to flip. There's that the lock knee that Tiger Woods does when he's driving, where he'll just lock his outside knee really hard to give himself more power. Because everything's in line, and good quarterbacks on the move, whether it's boot, rolling out of the pocket with pressure or whatever it is, and they're going to run heavy boot. There's no question about that with Shane Waldron. He had a really nice sense of how to do that, and then that gives him the confidence to throw those darts downfield, out of the pocket, righting his body. That I don't think anything looked too big for him, which is always nice to say about a rookie quarterback in his first game. And I think what I wrote was kind of how he is able to keep his mechanics together when there's just chaos and anarchy all around him, which is kind of, when you're playing in a Lincoln Riley offense, you sort of have to do that, but it's nice to see it transferable to the NFL.
And you talk about adversity. He had a few nice runs as well, where he wasn't going to force any passes. Got made sure to slide too, which is always important, especially this time of year.
Didn't he have the slip and slide on Hard Knocks?
I didn't watch Hard Knocks yet, so I mean maybe
he had him on a slip and I read that somewhere. I haven't watched it yet either. I haven't.
That's funny though. That's a very fun way to get him to learn. Yeah, Josh Allen slid too, and I think as soon as Sean McDermott saw him take off, he said, "All right, you're done. Yeah, we're not going to have you be doing that in August. You freaking nature. Nope, get out." Jayden Daniels also had a notable first performance, a really nice pass down the field, 44-yard gain to Diami Brown, and they finished off the drive with a Jayden Daniels touchdown run off the keeper on a read option. I mean, Jayden, I know that you were really high on Jayden Daniels. I was one of the people who was like, the talent's there. He's just really slim. I don't know how that's going to work. But first impression of the preseason, it's, knock on wood that it keeps going and everything. But really good impressions for Jayden Daniels in his first taste of action.
Well, the deep pass to Brown was no surprise. I got to talk to him. We watched a few tape examples the day before he won the Heisman. I got him for 8 minutes and I had to rush through it, but absolutely the best fade ball thrower in the NCAA last year. You knew that was going to come over. So he actually He checked out of I think it was a screen and said,
I was gonna say he says, "Nope, not throwing that screen. Watching this."
I got a fade here, and it was similar. Somebody put up his first big collegiate throw, and it was kind of the same play. So those boundary outs to fades, however they go, depending on what the receiver does. But he's just so good at those throws. I mean, he and Malik Neighbors just torched the league with those last year. So not a surprise there. The read option, he's going to do that. So a little bit of action, you got what you expected. And, the thing about the size, and everyone's comparing him to RG3 got hurt because Haloti Ngata landed on him. Haloti Ngata is the size of my house. That's why hurt. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're the hefty lefty, man. That's gonna leave a bruise. So, and the quarterbacks can be more protected outside the pocket as far as hits go. So the size thing is not a concern until it is. I'm not worried about that. I think he's got all the tools. He was my QB1 in the process. I liked him just a little bit over Williams.
And I think that for Williams and for Jayden and a lot of these guys, especially in today's NFL where we live in a world of, overreactions and takes and everything like that, it was important for them to have good outings, even if it's just, the first game of the preseason. Not indicative of how things will go, obviously. I mean, CJ Stroud had a little bit of a rough outing last year in his first preseason game against the Patriots, and he turned out just fine. So while not completely indicative in how things could go, it's nice to see them have good outings. I know you brought up JJ McCarthy in the lobby before we came into to do the show, and started off a little bit rusty, threw a pick, but then rebounded with 2 touchdown passes. And in terms of guys who went to perfect situations that fit their style, I know
there are at least 2 guys we're going to talk about with that, and he's one of them.
Yeah, he is certainly one of them. And a Kevin O'Connell offense for JJ McCarthy.
Can I just say,
Jerry, looks like
Kevin O'Connell is one of the 3 or 4 best offensive play designers in the NFL. I will brook no argument. He does not. I mean, yes, Shanahan, McVay, whoever. I put O'Connell up there, especially as a passing game designer with anybody in the NFL. Period. End of story. He had the 45-yard touchdown. They had mirrored go balls on 2 plays against the Raiders. One was against cover 3, 2 cover 2. And in a case like that, McConnell's just like, yeah, okay, screw it. I'm going to do the FU pay me routes. And, you're going to have to do something when 2 of our guys are just headed up to the boundary, 40 yards downfield or whatever. But if you watch that game, and yes, JJ McCarthy had a good game. I think he's more athletic than people think. Has a better arm than people think. I think he and the next guy we're going to talk about with the perfect situations are both relatively unheralded in their physical attributes. But what really blows me away about watching the Vikings offense is just how well it's designed. I mean, it's funny that O'Connell as a head coach gets like 1/10 the talk of a guy in his own division, which is Ben Johnson. And hey, justifiably, we all know Ben Johnson is awesome. Going to be a head coach here if he gets the thing he wants. But when it comes to dialing things up to make a defense just go, oh, crap, I don't know what to do. Somebody's going to miss an assignment. Somebody's going to be open, and it's by design over and over and over. So, yeah, McCarthy had a good game. I think it was positive for the most part. But what really stood out to me was just, and I've noticed this before, written about it before, just what a great offensive designer Kevin O'Connell is. And, this is a guy who was drafted by the Patriots, played a little quarterback. He actually went to broadcast boot camp at NFL Films, started talking to Greg Cosell a lot. And Greg has told me, you could tell right away this guy was going to be a coach because that's like, all he wants to do is talk ball. And so yes, McCarthy was cool, but man, if you want to have some fun this preseason, watch some Vikings tape. Watch the way he designs the offense, no matter who's in there. It's really cool.
And especially when it comes to like play action passing and the utilization of the intermediate routes. And we saw one of those with McCarthy on his second touchdown pass. But even if you go back and watch the stuff with Kirk over the past few years, I think week 1 a couple years ago against Minnesota, one of Justin Jefferson's biggest plays was off play action where he runs I think they ran mesh. And Jefferson just completely, just no one within 10 yards of him, which, I mean, how do you lose track of 18? It's because, well, a lot of these play designs are really good by Kevin O'Connell.
Well, because he forces you to.
Yeah.
He will force you to even go off Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. And everything that he does, I would agree. He's one of the more slept on play designers, play callers in the league today.
Top four to me. Maybe it's Shanahan, McVay, Johnson, and O'Connell. They're all in that. I should write an article about that, but he's right up there with anybody.
Absolutely. And you brought up another guy that we're going to talk about, and the other guy being Bo Nix in Denver in terms of, a quarterback. Now, I mean, I've been pretty outspoken about my lack of belief in Bo Nix.
Really? I haven't noticed that at all.
Maybe a little bit. It's just, man,
no, I've never experienced
that. As a Steelers fan who sat through 2 years of Kenny Pickett, I just fear that we're seeing kind of a redux of that in some way with Bo Nix, where he left Auburn because I feel like his abilities didn't really fit what Auburn wanted to do. I think going to an Oregon team that didn't ask him to push the ball downfield all that much. I think that he's somewhat limited with his arm. He's more athletic than guys like Pickett or maybe a Mac Jones, but I don't see a high ceiling there. But if he is going to succeed, Sean Payton is the perfect guy for him. And I think that, there's a reason that they took him where they did, because Sean Payton sees that he could probably have some sort of success with him. I think the absolute peak of what this can be for Bo Nix is like Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco, where if he were to go elsewhere, I think he would be somewhat exposed. But I think playing with Sean Payton will definitely help him look better than what he might be. Again, not rooting for bad things for Bo Nix. I hope he's incredibly successful. I just think personally, I just don't see it. And he played fine against the Colts, but he only had, I think, 5.7 yards per attempt. So there's the athleticism there, obviously, like I said, more so than guys that have come before that have struggled. But I do see a low ceiling for Bo Nix. I don't think you and I really talked too much about him, though, one-on-one. What are your thoughts on him coming out? What are your overall expectations for him?
Well, the two guys I got to watch tape with who were high in this process were Jayden Daniels for about 8 minutes, and then Greg and I got to watch tape with Bo Nix for like 40 minutes.
Okay.
Oh man, I love watching tape with players because you can really see what's inside their heads. And this is a coach's son. This is a guy who he'll take whatever playbook you give him and it'll just download right into his helmet. And that's reason one he's perfect for Peyton. He will run that offense. I mean, he was calling the protections at Oregon. He was doing all the checks. It wasn't like, I have to look to the number 6 and the Donald Duck. I have to figure it out from there. No. And that was a pro style offense at Oregon. You can throw this spread crap out. That's not what they do anymore. It's a bunch of high lows and different, rub concepts and, vertical stuff and crossers. And he had to keep track of everything. And he did that really well. What I said about Kenny Pickett when he came out is that his ceiling is Kirk Cousins and his floor is Kirk Cousins. And unfortunately, he went through to the basement. I think Bo Nix as an arm talent, and it's funny because when Herbert came out, Herbert was one of my biggest misses because I'm watching this guy miss on flat routes. What the hell? And they really kept a cap on him, which unfortunately has followed him through his NFL career. But I did not expect what I eventually saw from Justin Herbert. I think people are sleeping on Bo Nix as an arm talent. Okay. He had a deep sideline conversion to Cortland Sutton on 3rd and 10 in that game, where now he does get frenetic in the pocket, and he's got the YOLO crap. There's too much. He does have he's got like a 5% Jameis thing in his head where you never know when it's going to show up, that rogue gene. He will back trail in the pocket. He will take himself out of throws. But this was a case where he had to scramble. And, yes, the cornerback fell down. I get it. But he still had to make that throw to the sideline. And I think the combination, because there's 3 parts to this, right? There's the athleticism to run. There's the ability to throw with velocity and timing. But there's putting it together, right? It's, what can you do on the move? And on that throw, what we talked about with Caleb righting his body, Bo Nix did the same thing. I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, crap, if Caleb Williams had made this throw, we'd be talking about it, all week. But because Bo Nix, and there's sort of this created ceiling for him, which I don't really agree with. I'm not saying he's I'm not saying he's the toolsiest guy in the draft. That was probably Drake May. But I think he's got a lot more on the ball physically than people are giving him credit for. And I think that's going to show up in this offense.
Okay. And by the way, for as much of a I don't know, for lack of a better term, for as much of a shit talker as I can be, I'll be the first to admit when I'm wrong about something. And if Bo Nix, goes out and balls and has a long, really good career, then I will happily eat that L. And hopefully he does. Yeah,
never. But again, it's like we talked about with McCarthy and O'Connell. This is an ideal situation because
absolutely
Peyton was tearing his hair off with Russ. Because Russ is going to run the Russell Wilson offense no matter where. In 2043, when he's playing for the Egyptian football league, he's going to be running the same damn offense. That's all he can do. I mean, and Peyton's like, no. I am Michelangelo over here. I am designing Sistine Chapel, and I'm going to download it onto your face. And Russ is like, huh? What? No,
I think, to stick with the artist comp, if Peyton is Michelangelo, I think Russell Wilson is Jackson Pollock, where it's just going to be splatters everywhere, but we're going to figure this shit out, and it's going to be something.
I think he was Jackson Pollock. The last few years, he's been one of those knockoff guys in the subway.
Oh, that's fair. Yeah. Where he's he's just painting in the corners. Like, that'll be $600.
One of those guys in downtown Portland who's making a performance art statement, and everyone's like, maybe we need to arrest this dude. I don't know.
Well, for being the Steelers fan on the channel, I hope that something good comes out of this art renaissance for Russell Wilson. That would be lovely. We'll in terms of the preseason, it's I wrote yesterday, if overreactions were a sunset, the preseason would be their Instagram, and this is the prime time for overreactions in football. Seeing we've been depraved of it for 6 months now. We're seeing it back on the field. One of the overreactions that I probably have, and I wrote about it yesterday, Spencer Rattler in New Orleans. Watching that, especially the game-winning drive that he led, I was just saying like, okay, maybe there's something there. And I think a lot of people, talk about guys who got overlooked. Rattler, started his career at Oklahoma, had to transfer to South Carolina, and in large part, his draft stock fell for something that he said when he was 17 on a Netflix show.
And guys in the league are still holding that against him, which is ridiculous. It's like, okay, we get that you want everyone to be, to bend the knee and kiss the ring, but come on.
Sure. And if you look at his raw numbers from the game, and they weren't like gaudy or anything, it went 9 of 17. But on the final drive, I think he went 6 of 10, led them down the field and to kick a game-winning field goal, ran for a touchdown, and there seems to be something that could possibly be there with Spencer Rattler. And what I wrote is that it's not necessarily an overreaction to say that we could see Spencer Rattler as the starter for the Saints before year's end. I know they brought in Clint Kubiak as the offensive coordinator. That should help Derek Carr. But if it doesn't, I think that Derek Carr kind of showed last year we're kind of in for a little bit of a fall off. And if the Saints are sitting there mid-season like 3-6, it's not going anywhere. Why not see what you have in Spencer Rattler going into 2025 and go from there? I don't think that's an overreaction. Some people might say it is, but I liked what I saw from Spencer Rattler, and I think that we could see him in a starting role at some point.
I completely agree. About a month and a half ago, I wrote for SB Nation that given Derek Carr's limitations, which, mobility, ability to throw under pressure, the ability to turn it loose. And I've talked to people who are more knowledgeable about quarterbacking than I am. And it's kind of unanimous. Like, what are you afraid of? Throw the damn ball. This is what I said after what, the Rams quarterback. Why am I blanking on this? I just wrote a piece about it. Stetson Bennett.
Yeah. Stetson Bennett, I don't know if it was yeah.
Stetson Bennett will stand in the pocket like hitch, throw the ball. The play's over. Carr kind of has that. And what I wrote was, given Rattler's ability to turn it loose both in and out of the pocket, he's really good on boot. And just the overall, there's a spring to that. It kind of reminds me of Garoppolo and Purdy.
I was just about to say, yes.
Because one thing, like 3 games in with Brock Purdy as a starter, somebody asked Kyle Shanahan, what's different now? And he said, the middle of the field is always open. The stuff 15 yards and more is always open. And once you have that quarterback who allows you to finally break the limitations that he has, and you can now use more of your playbook, well, any coach is going to want that. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how much the guy's getting paid. Up top, if the guy in second should be first, that's going to bear out over time. And I think in Rattler, Rattler, he's frenetic. My God, sometimes like, slow down. And he's going to have to be because that offensive line, and he was with the backup line. But man, I don't know if any of you guys out there, any guys, girls, whoever watched Trevor Penning against the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so they're going to have line problems. That does not bode well for Carr. Carr needs the stuff to be a certain way. Rattler, in those situations, I mean, yeah, he'll make some, just like, what are you doing? But there will be those explosions. So I think in a case with the Saints where, everyone's just castigated them for years for being so boring. Not that being exciting is the object of the thing, but I think Rattler does have more just base ability to create big plays consistently than Carr does. And, unless their defense is just lights out and wins them a lot of games and they're in a playoff hunt, I would agree that you could see, if it doesn't go the way they want halfway through the season, you could see a lot more of him pretty quickly.
I talked to Aaron Schatz about the Saints, and he says, the Saints aren't like horrible. They're just incredibly boring, and that's why no one wants to talk about them. Like the defense is probably going to be pretty solid because it was last year, even though, most of their core is getting older. But playing in that division, as long as that defense is, pretty solid, I can imagine they'll be, hovering around 500 throughout the season, which, could give them a false sense of hope and maybe have them a little bit hesitant on making a quarterback change. But if anything, I think that should make you a little bit more progressive toward a quarterback change. If you're just constantly just, being very stagnant offensively and the defense is playing well, why not, kick it up a notch and see what Rattler can give you?
Well, if you got a starting quarterback who starts yelling at the receiver for running the wrong route
all the time, yeah.
After the quarterback has missed 3 backside digs in the first half, I mean, that does wear on the locker room.
Was it against Jacksonville last year on Thursday night where he's just like screaming at Chris Olave after he missed him on just blatantly missed him? I think Olave kept running.
Dan Fouts used to wear a baseball cap in the Chargers locker room that said MFIC, Mother Bleeper in Charge. You can do that if you're Dan Fouts. You cannot do it if you're Derek Carr. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, there was
you're not the MFIC at that point.
There's like a famous NFL films of Fouts and Winslow going at it on the sideline.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they were always like, we do this because we have to get it out. We're playing 4D chess. Well, this is checkers and you're still yelling. Why? Just get on the same page.
It's certainly something. I'll ask you what you think of the Steelers quarterback situation, because obviously I'm watching it very intently. Justin Fields went 5 of 6 for 67 yards in his first appearance as a Steeler. There's a couple muffed exchanges on a couple.
Yeah, that was weird.
It was. Well, you know what? I'm going to chalk that up, and you know what? I'm a little bit biased here. I'm going to chalk that up to the center was Nate Herbig, and God bless Nate Herbig. He couldn't beat out Mason Cole for the job last year, so I'm going to perhaps chalk that up to if Zach Frazier was in there. I don't know if that happens. But go ahead.
It seems like they're going to run more under center, which is not something Fields is really familiar with. He's not done it a lot. He's been in shotgun and pistol most of his career. So if they're running under center, which is kind of an Arthur Smith thing, that might take a minute. It's a weird situation for a lot of reasons. Arthur Smith has 2 quarterbacks who don't really operate well in structure. Mm-hmm. Both are, I wouldn't say great improvisers, but they're interesting improvisers. Like, you put on the blindfold and light up the smoke because you don't know what's going to happen. It's really kind of a hold fast, maybe until next year. They decided to put their efforts into other parts of the roster. They're like, hey, we've had winning seasons with negative point differentials like 3 straight years under Matt Canada. We know how to do this. Yeah, that's not a problem. We can suck on offense and, sneak into the playoffs and then get blown out. So I don't know. I mean, you're closer to the situation than I am, literally and metaphorically. But it seems to me like this is a year to hold fast to the quarterback thing and just make sure everything else is dialed in.
And I think that you could look at it both ways as to why they brought in both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, where Russell Wilson's going to start the season as the starter, I think, regardless of what happens. And if the offense looks better than what it did a year before, which is a very low bar, and I'm sure that they have certain a certain bar that they want to reach before pulling that emergency lever and saying, okay, we'll put in Justin Fields. But, I think that there will also be some sense of, okay, we got this, 26-year-old, really dynamic athlete on the sideline compared to Russ, who, he's on the back nine of his career. This is probably his last go round in the league in Pittsburgh. So I'm intrigued to see what they do. I think Fields played overall fine in the preseason game. He had a nice, they ran play action, and he hit Van Jefferson on a nice crosser on the opposite sideline, perfectly placed ball. He's looked good in camp.
If you design things open for Fields, he's got every possible physical tool to make it work.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying he's a lost cause. I think the situation in Chicago was suboptimal for a lot of reasons, a lot of which were not his fault. You never know if a quarterback starts out in the NFL in a bad situation, like what kind of PTSD do you have to work through? That's, it's a whole different deal. But there's no question that he has, I guess for Fields, we talk about like making the whole plan out of the black box, which is kind of what the Dolphins have done with their offense. Arthur Smith tends to make the whole plane out of the grease underneath the wheel well. And I'm never quite sure why he's doing what he's doing.
I saw a list that was made that ranked Art as the fifth best coordinator in the NFL going into the season of just any kind, offensive or defensive. And I get that he did really good things with Tennessee, but I thought that even as a Steelers fan, I was like, all right, let's pump the brakes a little bit there, eh?
You remember that column I did for USA Today last year called Worst of the Week, which I'll be reprising sometime?
Yeah.
You know how many times he made it in there?
I don't think he's a good head coach, Doug, but I think the OC stuff could work.
He's running the offense.
I know he was. But you talk about learning,
perhaps with full attention, and we have Tomlin up top, and he's awesome. Mike Tomlin for president. I don't know. We'll see.
I think that we've seen guys who have had head coaching gigs before and go from coordinator to head coach, and everybody's they're like, okay, like Steve Spagnuolo,
Wade Phillips, Steve Spag.
Yeah. I think he's probably the prime example of that. As okay, especially now. After
I asked him during media day at the Super Bowl, "Do you ever want to be a head coach?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'd love an opportunity, but otherwise, I'll just stay here and keep winning Super Bowls." That's fine.
Anyway,
okay, that makes sense.
I think being like Steve Spagnuolo, Dick LeBeau, somebody like that in that position, that's the dream. You're like, all right, I don't got any of the pressure from like the media, not like the big time pressure. I can just keep being awesome.
I'm in my office 16 hours a day, grinding like a maniac. Yes, absolutely. Just put a pizza under the door and go.
Good stuff all around. Doug Farrar, what are you looking forward to most in week 2 of the preseason? Who are you going to be watching a little bit intently?
Let's see. I haven't really gone that far yet. I think I want to see. Well, we haven't talked about Michael Penix. I thought Penix was interesting because the Falcons really challenged him to go through his progressions, and he had a really nice dig to Washington, the rookie from Indiana, who everybody in that building loves.
Had a really good toss downfield against the Dolphins.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't really gone that far yet. I'm excited that it's back. And I don't know who's playing how long either. It's different than a regular season matchup where I have no clue. I mean,
and even I think
if I talk about Michael Penix being all of a sudden unable to hit the boundary to either side, and I want to see him right the ship on that. Well, when they play the Ravens, is he going to be in there? Are they going to do something else? I don't know.
Do you think that there's a good chance that we look back on this in a few years and, we look back on the criticism that was given to Atlanta and we all kind of have egg on our face? Or is this something that what do you see in Penix, I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, Kirk Cousins, he's still coming back from that injury and he's getting older. There's a reason in his first NFL game, he had 5 throws in which he was going through multiple progressions. That is really unusual for a rookie in a freaking preseason game. They want to get him up to speed as quickly as possible just in case. I think they see it ideally as he sits for a couple of years and then Kirk is great and then Kirk does whatever. But they also know, hey, he's one, we don't wish for this, obviously. He's one unfortunate snap away from, okay, number 9, it's you. I hope all that preseason stuff worked out. But they are putting him on a fast track. And I think that's why he struggled at times. I mean, he was missing wild on some stuff. He had, so many deep passes at Washington, more than 30 more than any other quarterback in the NCAA last year. And all of a sudden it was like, where did this come from? So we'll see.
Good stuff all around. Doug Farrar, what do you got coming for the lovely people that they can read?
A whole bunch of stuff on Athlon and a little bit of thing on SB Nation about Mr. Penix. And we're cooking our brew over at Sporting News.
Yes, we are. I'm doing something on the Jaguars offense and what it could look like this season. So that'll be, I think they're going to make a lot of changes. I think that this is going to be more of a Trevor Lawrence allowed to uncork some stuff downfield. And the moves that they've made kind of back that up. So
I'll tell you what two teams I'm looking forward to seeing what they do on defense is the Jaguars with Ryan Nielsen.
Yep.
Guy. And I don't know if you got to see any of the Seahawks with Mike McDonald running that defense now.
I didn't watch a play of the Seahawks game. Yeah, I'll have to give that
a boy. It's not just because I'm up here. I'm 10 miles from the facility. I can already tell. I was feasting on Ravens defensive tape last year. I'm be feasting on Seahawks defensive tape this year. It's been a long time since I've said that.
Interesting note. Yeah, no, I will give that a gander then. And,
the offense is fun, but that defense, I mean, the stuff they were doing and just like, oh, the cornerback spacing is correct now. You're actually running the coverage you're supposed to. Okay, that's an improvement over last season. I like it.
Good stuff all around.
I mean, it seemed like every play every play that Chargers game, there were 5 guys around the ball.
Yeah, I haven't watched a snap of that
guy
yet.
Is such a genius at just knowing.
And I mean, that's why he got hired, obviously. Yeah, and I think that Seattle saw that too. Like this whole head coaching cycle is like, all right, Pete's getting a little bit older. We're not going to have a head coaching cycle like this again, probably for a while. So let's just, do this now. And
I think McDonald was the last guy hired, wasn't he?
He might have been. I don't know. I'd have to go and look at that. Oh yeah, because I think Vrabel and Pete Carroll were both fired like at the tail end of like the head coaching hiring cycle. So yeah, you'll have that though. But Doug Farrar, I always appreciate you hopping on with me. Everybody, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, do that. Listen to the Pump Fake wherever you get your podcasts. And read all the written work at Sporting News. Read all Doug's work at Sporting News, Athlon, and SB Nation. We'll be back later on in the week to discuss more preseason action, more what's going on around the league. It's going to be a lot of fun. Appreciate everybody for tuning in though. Take care of each other. Take care of yourselves. Have a good day.